once again, so many people. So wonderful to see all of you. Good morning. My name is Owsley Brown, and this is my co-collaborator, co-programmer for this year's Festival of Faiths, Gray Henry. And we want to just say once again, welcome to each of you and all of you, especially those of you who are here for the first time. We've had a couple of days of really sensational programs, and we have a couple days more. So if you are here for the first time, just know we'd love to see you back for any of the programs coming forward. As I think you all know, our festival title is Sacred Silence, Pathway to Compassion. And the whole sort of intention and purpose of this festival has been to, in many ways, seed the ground for the visit that His Holiness the Dalai Lama will be making here starting on Sunday afternoon. And so our orientation in putting this program together was very much to use the historic ecumenical attitude that the festival has had, but then also sort of lean into Tibetan Buddhism specifically because of His Holiness's visit. And also because of his visit, we wanted to try and make as many connections here to Louisville as we could. And we, of course, had an easy time doing that by way of our, as I like to say, our adopted son, our much beloved adopted son, Thomas Merton, who many of you surely know, and some of you may not know, but he's certainly worth getting to know, and we'll try to make some connection to him even through this morning's program. But before we get on to the details of this morning's program, we just want to take a quick moment to recognize and honor the folks that have really helped us make this festival possible. And we'll just do a quick run-through of our absolute fabulous sponsors who have given us financial support and therefore allowed this event to occur. Brown-Forman and the City of Louisville, the Archdiece of Louisville, the Earth and Spirit Center, the Muhamad Ali Center, Louisville Public Media. We have a great connection with our moderator today with Louisville Public Media. DGI, the Thomas Merton Center, Fons Vitae, thank you, Gray. Compassionate Louisville, which many of you are connected to and know. Idea Festival, Val Jones and the Whiskey Row Lofts. We have a fabulous show of photographs of Thomas Merton up right now, just a block away at Whiskey Row Lofts there right on Main Street. And also Christy Brown for her enduring and unwavering support of this festival. And we have an incredible staff that has made this really possible, and we should absolutely applaud them. The staff has now been supported by an extraordinary team, and if we named them all, it would be too long of a list, but we certainly would be remiss in not naming the three principal members of the staff team. Dr. Kathleen Lyons is the office director, and Sarah Reed Harris and Chris Wooten are her chief hubs of all activities Festival of Faiths related, and we are, both of us, and I know, I'm sure all of you too, extremely grateful to them. I think maybe Gray, we'll say here's one bit of really great news. This entire festival, speaking of our effort at getting real with the times, is streaming. It's everything that we are doing is either live or YouTubeable. So if you haven't been to our program yet, check out our program guide and look at it and say, oh darn, I missed that yesterday. Well, it turns out you didn't really miss it if you have a computer and access to YouTube, because you just type it in and up it will pop, and it's quite beautifully produced, I might add. And that goes for any program going forward. So that's big deal for us. Hopefully it'll be a big deal for you. Tell your friends, share that with the world. And
yes, this morning I rewatched Martin Laird from yesterday because I wished I'd taken notes. He was talking about how not to be taken over by your thoughts. He said, pretend you're in a phone booth and there's a bee. So what you do is you just imagine you're in a meadow and then it opens out, do you see? And so when somebody's doing a chainsaw next door all day long, a bee, right? Like, wish they'd stop. You just go into the meadow and you don't judge and you don't care, you just watch. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and all of that can be experienced by you right in the comfort of your iPhone. Imagine that. Okay, so Gray's going to introduce our fantastic moderator. We've had so many fantastic moderators. Oh, one last thing. Father Joe, who many of you know, connected with the Earth and Spirit Center, has put together this list. This is out in the auditorium. This is an amazing list that's entitled Meditation Opportunities and Contemplative Practices in Metro Louisville, and it's listed under categories like Buddhism, Christianity, interreligious, non-denominational. There's something for everybody here. And don't forget to pick one of these up if you're interested, and thank you, Father Joe. And do you want to introduce our moderator? And then
Yes. Besides the moderator, I want to alert you to 2 talks this afternoon or later on, which are not to be missed. We have from India, Mr. Rajiv, who is the Dalai Lama's personal disciple, who in fact was given the Nobel Prize money that the Dalai Lama took for his award to create the Institute of Human Responsibility. He's a great filmmaker, one of the Dalai Lama's closest friends, and he will be introducing Archdiese Rinpoche, who has an incredible story, and I hope the young are able to be here for that, how he escaped from China and finally made it to South America, and ultimately the Dalai Lama brought him to head the center in Bloomington. And then later in the afternoon, Swami Didiji, who is fantastic, will make Hinduism made easy. Everyone thinks, oh, many gods, are you kidding? So come and have your whole life changed by DDG. All right, so Jonathan Bastian, we are so happy to have you here in Louisville with us. Jonathan works for NPR. You hear him early in the morning. He has to get up early in the morning. Oh, a new voice that has been speaking to bleary Louisvillians from their morning radios. Intoning the news and weather forecast, Jonathan Bastian, the local host of NPR's Morning Edition. A native of Colorado, Bastian recently moved to Louisville from Aspen, where he hosted NPR's All Things Considered, wow, and Page by Page, an author-interviewed show that aired on public radio stations across the state. Bastian does have a previous connection to our river city, however. He reports that during his childhood at Woody Creek, Colorado, he was neighbors with the Louisvillian writer Hunter Thompson. Yeah, okay.
A wonderful Kentucky connection. See, it all comes back to Louisville. It's just amazing. And we're happy to say we have lots of people visiting from out of town, and thank you all so much for honoring us by making the journeys that you've made to be a part of this, and that, not the least of which, of course, includes our speakers, and specifically Dungse Jampal Norbu, who you all are all here to see, and as am I, and it is an incredible honor to be welcoming you here, Dungse La. It's so exciting that you would include us in your schedule, and I'll just start by saying, well, let me end by saying the really amazing thing for me. So anyway, Dungse La is the son of the great Kangshro Rinpoche, who many of you know is really a leader in his generation of Tibetan teachers to come to the West and really try to relate in a very open and loving way to the Western situation, and then through that connection to the Western situation, be able to offer these profound teachings that his lineage and background in Tibetan Buddhism has been carrying really unbroken for 2,500 years. His mother, Elizabeth Mathis Namgyal, who was born in America, taught here 3 days ago and is a beloved and extraordinary author and teacher. Both of them will be teaching again Saturday morning, so if you didn't have a chance to see Elizabeth and you don't pull out your iPhone before Saturday, you can see her then. Under his father's wing, he's received many teachings and transmissions. When still an infant, the extraordinary Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche instructed Kangshro Rinpoche to train Dungse La to uphold Khanchen Rinpoche's lineage in the West. Dungse La spent 5 years studying Tibetan and traditional Buddha Dharma in Bir, India, to fulfill this vision, and is now embarking on an extended retreat at Rinpoche's retreat center in the amazing Crestone, Colorado. And last but not least, to bring this back to Louisville and the connections that just seem to continuously unfold between our city and these amazing wisdom traditions. Dungse La's grandfather, Netan Choling Rinpoche, was one of the few heavyweight masters that Merton met just weeks before he died. And in Merton's own journals that were published after his death, the Asian Journal, Merton makes clear that Choling Rinpoche made a huge impact, and it is specifically believed, it should be noted, that Choling Rinpoche gave Thomas Merton these very specific teachings on what to do at the moment of death to make more easily, make easier the transition from this life to the next, which is a rather profound thing to think that anybody would receive such teachings, but in this case it was none other than Dungse La's grandfather who gave them to our own Thomas Merton. And without further ado, let me ask you all to join me in welcoming Dungse La to the stage.
Who's going to do the silence?
Yeah, you can go.
Hello, everyone. Well, this is a new setting for me. So, before I begin, I've been asked to, I suppose, initiate our 3 minutes of meditation. I believe we're starting every session with a brief 3-minute sitting meditation, or just sitting, I suppose, whatever you're into. And I will mark the beginning with the sound of this bell, and I will end it with the sound of the bell. And then we will begin together. Thank you. I realize now that was more like 5 minutes, but we probably could have all used it anyways. So, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Owsley, for that very generous introduction. It's my pleasure to be here, and my intention is to talk about karma and the imperative of compassion. Now, it's a bit of a wordy title in some ways. Imperative is really just the need for action, the need for compassionate action in this case. But karma is such a complex topic, or a profound topic in my mind, and one that is not always understood. Wi-Fi keeps popping up. And I think it's good to introduce karma as I understand it in the beginning. So, actually we have so many students here. We can do it this way. Raise your hand if you know what karma is. Can anyone give me an explanation, particularly from the upper level? Just shout it out and I'll repeat it. Okay, for the microphone. Who would like to tell me what karma is?
We've got somebody here.
Okay.
What goes around comes around.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah, boy.
That's actually better than most explanations I've heard.
Better fall
Usually.
over here.
It's true. Karma is what goes around comes around. And how does it go around? What is that go around process? Karma is often understood as a kind of like fate or destiny or something like that. Pretty enigmatic and not easily tangible. Karma is very, very present at all times. And if we look closely, it is easily observable. Karma, as I understand it, is really cause and effect. That's scientific enough for anyone, really. Just cause and effect. That an action will lead to a reaction. And then that reaction will lead to a reaction, which leads to a reaction, which leads to a reaction, and so on. But it's not quite so linear like that. For instance, someone mentioned this morning a stone being dropped into a lake. If you drop the stone into the lake, you'll send out ripples, a ripple effect. But it's not just one ripple. It's multiple ripples. Every action has more than just one obvious effect. If you let go of the stone, it'll fall, cause and effect. It'll hit the water, effect. It'll send out ripples, effect. There are so many effects from any one action, so that we can think of cause and effect not as linear, but more like a giant web, where it starts from one strand, which branches out into 5 strands or 10 strands, and then just bursts out into this huge interconnected web of action. And it's interesting to think of cause and effect in this way, because generally when we think of cause and effect, it's so linear. What goes around comes around. This one action will eventually come back to us. how does it come back to us? It comes back to us exactly because everything is connected, because there are so many effects. If karma was linear, if cause and effect was linear, then one action would lead to, let's say we're here. We do something and then it kind of affects someone else, it affects someone else, affects someone else. It wouldn't really make its way back to us. But it branches out. It branches out to people around us. It branches out to our environment. It affects our own mind even. For instance, if I drop the stone, I know that I dropped the stone. And just knowing that I dropped the stone is another moment in my life. It is another part of my life. And even just dropping a stone, which may seem insignificant at the time, we hold memories of dropping stones. We hold memories of the actions which we have done in the past. Significant or insignificant at the time, they have an effect on us, as well as our immediate environment. I think that this isn't always understood, particularly in the West. I mean, I hear about karma on TV shows like My Name is Earl. I haven't actually watched much of the show, just that opening episode. And this is the one where he punches out the fast food manager, I think. And he says something like, "Karma was guiding my fist." He looks up and goes, "Good work, karma." Not exactly taking responsibility there, but it's not very clearly explained. Although karma is present, it's just cause and effect. But then, does that mean that any cause leads to any effect? No, that doesn't make sense. If we drop the stone, we know that it'll fall. If we drop into water, we can see it'll make ripples. But if there is no water, will it make ripples? That doesn't make any sense. The water has to be present for there to be ripples. So for cause and effect to come around to us, for what goes around comes around to actually come around, there has to be the right conditions for it to come around. So we may think that I did something, what really comes around to bite you? I'm sorry?
Consequences.
Consequences.
Yeah.
But specifically,
Yelling at your children.
yelling at your children. Okay,
All right.
let's go with that. My very imaginary child here, I'm yelling at my imaginary child. It doesn't look like there's any immediate effect. It doesn't look like, maybe I'm not quite sure what I would yell at my perfect child. But let's say I am seriously in the wrong, and there's totally innocent, never did anything bad, but I'm in the wrong, yelling at my child. I'm, let's say, saying that they're too messy. They didn't clean their room fast enough. They were just taking their time, but they didn't clean it fast enough for my taste. So I'm upset at them. No noticeable reaction there. Later on, when I'm cleaning something, the child goes, "You're not cleaning fast enough." And you can make that legitimate comeback because I am cleaning. Can't quite make that comeback if I am not in a position where I can also be proven in the wrong. If we eat too much of a food which is bad for us, we feel awesome. Later down the line, when it's not so obvious, when it's not so directly connected in our mind, we can feel really sick. Even though the eating of the food and being sick is not totally obviously connected, the conditions are still there for us to become sick. Like in a car ride, for instance, on a windy road. When the conditions are there, we will definitely be sick. But the conditions have to be there. Cause and conditions have to be present for karma to manifest, so to speak. So it's not like we have the effects of our reactions will just suddenly jump on us at any time. The conditions have to be there. And I say this because sometimes it seems like we totally got away with what we did. Or no consequences, YOLO. But when the conditions are there, it does come back to us. What goes around always comes around, although it's not always obvious what that coming around came from. Okay, so cause and effect, not such a big deal. Why do we even need to think about cause and effect so much? As human beings, as living beings, it is our very natural tendency to always aspire to be happy, to always lean towards happiness. Even if we kind of gravitate towards pain, it's still somewhat leaning towards happiness because we're looking for some sort of fulfillment. We're looking for some sort of catharsis or something along those lines where we just want to be fulfilled, want to be settled, want to be happy. It's a very natural tendency, just as a living being. And we can see this from natural aversion to pain, natural moving towards pleasurable experiences. We see this in humans, we see this in animals. I just read recently that insects are proven to have no nerves or nothing similar to nerves which causes them pain. But still that natural instinct is there where if you have like a match or an insect is around the match and it lights and the insect will run away from the fire. Like it's very natural, like, away from the pain. Puts out some sugar water towards the sugar. Like most of us, towards the sugar. So there is that inherent moving towards pleasure, towards happiness. We look for happiness in many places. Most often we look for happiness or enjoyment in external causes, like shiny bowl or iPad or good food. We look for happiness in external things, in good company, in TV, in so many things. I have this notion that if I drink this water and I am thirsty, the water will quench my thirst and I will be happy. I will be free from the suffering of my throat. That's good, but not good enough. Because it's a state of mind, really. if I am in a bad mood, that water is not really going to bring me a whole lot of joy. If I'm in a good mood, the water might bring me tremendous joy just because I'm in a good mood. You ever do something like really small, really simple when you're in a good mood and you just feel ecstatic because this is you make a little origami crane or just create something with your hands and it's like, this is awesome. I don't know why it's so fun, but this is really fun. You tried the same thing when you were grumpy and it's not the same anymore. It's a state of mind. We don't find happiness in external things. We don't find it in water. We don't find it in shiny things. We don't find it in money. We don't necessarily find it in other people either. Because the happiness is internal. And trying to find that somewhere else. I've personally never found happiness externally. I've enjoyed things, but it was always from an internal source. My own attitude towards what I was engaging with externally. If I have friends, I enjoy my friends because I am engaging with them from a positive place within myself. When I'm kind of in a negative way of thinking, even my friends, sorry, I can be a little bit nasty. So it is really internal, an internal source of happiness. And really looking internally, how is it that we suffer? How is it that we are happy? Looking closely, all the pain in the world comes from really wishing happiness only for oneself. It's being very focused on self. All the joy that the world contains, these are the words of the great Buddhist master Shantideva. All the joy the world contains comes from wishing happiness to others, really being free of the attachment to self, going beyond oneself. I'm sure we all have this experience in our own lives. We're very self-focused, very concerned with our own situation, and we are only one person, so it's a pretty small situation. There's a lot of tight condensing, a lot of focus, a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety. And clinging to our own situation causes a lot of pain, where we're able to relax and not really worry so much about our own little situation, open ourselves up to a broader spectrum. There's a lot more freedom and peace. And that's really where we start finding happiness. Because think of negative emotions. Think of anger or jealousy or all the emotions we don't really want to have. They all come from an intense focus on self. I am angry at so-and-so because they did something I didn't like. I am jealous of whoever this is because they have something I don't. All negative emotions come from an intense grasping to self. When that grasping is released, then we don't have those negative feelings. We don't have those painful emotions so much. But this is difficult because it's a habit. A very strong habit of clinging to our personal conditions. And the habits are hard to break. Best way to break a bad habit is to introduce a new habit which counters that. And this positive habit, I will go into compassion. Can I get another definition of compassion? Who knows what, or who has the definition of compassion? I don't have a dictionary on me right now. Anyone? Putting yourself in someone else's shoes. True. So not being so self-concerned, thinking from another perspective, expanding our awareness. Anyone else?
Putting someone else's needs in front of yours.
Putting someone else's needs in front of yours. I think I saw a hand up here. Yes, with the curly hair. It's kind of hard to see.
Putting an emphasis on the love that you have for something.
Absolutely. One more. Yes.
Showing a love that you normally show yourself to others.
Yes, that is really good. The love that we generally show ourselves to others. I mean, compassion it's just one word, but it covers such a spectrum, just like karma. It's got a really wide breadth of activity. And showing the love that we show to ourselves to others, if we can think of others as being just as important as ourselves, and if we have this natural tendency to want to be happy, and if we can see others being happy and we consider others to be just as important as ourselves, isn't that double the happiness? Triple the happiness? If I care about 10 people just as much as myself and they're all happy, aren't I 10 times as happy as I would normally be? Not that I can really say I feel that way completely, but for those times when I do go beyond myself and care about others, I really feel much happier than I ever do just thinking about myself. And this is all my personal experience. One of my favorite Buddhist quotes from the Buddha himself is, "Study my words like a goldsmith examines gold." Very carefully. Don't take anything I say at face value. Examine it very carefully for yourself. Which means there's so much room for just examining one's own experience. And when we examine our own experience, we really connect with the logic. We connect with we can see truth in our own experience. How does this all tie into karma? Karma is cause and effect. If we see that compassion is a better route to travel than being self-absorbed in our own situations, we can say that that is a cause of happiness, and the effect will be happiness. We have to find the right cause to bring about the happiness. We have to find the right conditions so that that happiness can really manifest. The cause and conditions have to be there for the happiness to manifest, and as we are responsible for our own actions, our actions will lead to either our happiness or our suffering. And typically we talk about karma with good and bad karma, positive and negative actions. But as many great Buddhist masters have said, and Shakespeare as well, nothing is ever good or bad. It's thinking that makes it so. It's really not as if the actions we do are good or bad inherently in themselves. It's that they do not promote happiness in ourselves or in others. A positive action brings happiness to ourselves and to others. A negative action does not. A negative action, being a selfish action, just causes us pain. We see it negative because we don't want that. It may seem as if we got to look out for number one. And certainly we have to take care of ourselves, but just looking out for number one, it seems like such a constricted view personally. Because all the pain and anxiety comes from looking out for number one, being so focused on number one, being number one. Thinking of myself as number 5, that's a lot less pressure. No one likes that kind of pressure. So, our actions will provide the conditions, the causes for our own happiness. Karma is vast and spread out. And karma, I'm just saying cause and effect. Cause and effect, it's all over the place. Just from me sitting here, talking to all of you, how will this affect you? I'm not saying that I'm affecting you, but you are experiencing where you are. And that experience becomes part of us. And how will that influence everyone that we know? And how will that influence everyone that your friends or parents or children, how will that affect everything that they know? So just from me sitting here, the web of cause and effect shoots out in all directions. And it may not be obvious at first, but when the causes and conditions are there, maybe we will see some effect from this encounter with each other. We will see something manifest. You know the theory that, chaos theory, when a butterfly flaps its wings, there's a thunderstorm in Louisville? I tend not to think of that as chaos. I think of that as very subtle cause and effect, that things are connected in such a way. Because we are affected by everything that we experience. Because we are made up of such experiences. So, thank you. I, in some way, caused that. No. How do we conduct ourselves, then? I can't say how to bring about thunder. That was totally my bad. But how do we cause the conditions for a happier life? We have to go beyond ourselves. There was a study, I just read a study, it was in Montreal, so however legitimate you feel that is. It was, I love the exhibit, it was fantastic. It was Star Wars, so I believed it immediately. Star Wars exhibit on identity. It was a study that showed individuals who lived an altruistic lifestyle, a lifestyle of caring for others and being compassionate to others, lived longer, happier, healthier lives than people who were more self-concerned. And seeing a study that shows that really brings out the question that my actions affect my world. My actions affect my environment. My actions affect my own mind. So in a sense, the way I act creates my world. To me, this is a beverage. To a fish, this is a home. We all have causing conditions in our lives right now that make us view things in a certain way. I'm a human being. I do not see this as a home. Fish is a fish. It sees this as a home. Those are the causing conditions of my life and the fish's life. So, if I try to be a fish, maybe at some point I would see this as a home. If I can affect my environment through my actions, through the way I view things, because everything's relative. Everything we see is relative. If I see this as good, someone else sees it as bad. We have two different worlds almost. My world and their world. We really create our own world and the world that we experience. And perhaps being positive, I can also affect those around me into considering this is positive and not negative. My point of this is we, through our actions, create our own world because cause and effect works in this way. When does cause and effect not work in this way? I haven't seen cause and effect not work in this way. And you can see for yourselves whether or not we do create our own worlds through our actions, through our perspective, through our attitude, how we treat things, whether we treat things as a beneficial gift or as a hindrance, whether we have a positive attitude or a negative attitude in any action that we do. And perhaps when we are able to go beyond ourselves, when we are able to bring our consideration to encompass others around us, we feel motivated to be a benefit to others, to be of service to others. If we can create our own world in this way, we can really change the world and be of great service to ourselves and to others. And being of service to the world, having this attitude, being of service to the world, that sounds exhausting. But if we are truly able to just let go of our own attachment to our personal conditions, it would be a tremendous joy. I'm only scratching the surface of that personally. Being able to really go beyond myself is what has brought me here. If I'm not saying I'm that far out of myself, but someone's calling me on this. Maybe I'm not out of myself at all. Hypothetically, if I am out of myself, I will be a much happier person. And I will thoroughly enjoy serving the world. This is just me talking. I think that's the sign for Q&R. Questions and responses. So I think I've talked a lot. I'd love to open it up to questions, and I believe we have our very esteemed moderator to handle that. I'm being rather selfish right now. There are two glasses here, and I believe I may have been drinking from both. No, okay, I'm good. This is for you. If you do. You know, technically the glass is always full, I've heard. It's half full of air and half full of water.
Well, it's been such a pleasure listening in the audience today. And again, I'm Jonathan Bash, and I get to work with the NPR station WFPL, and a thank you to Owsley and the whole festival for allowing us to bring some of these voices onto our own radio waves and your own public radio station here. To be involved in that has been a real pleasure. I just want to begin the dialogue, and I know we want to hear from all of you and all of your questions. I think one of the beauties of this conference is the time that we have to explore these issues. So maybe I'm going to get us going here with some questions, but then begin to think of yours as well, and we'll start to reach out. You know, we're lucky also to have some great young minds sitting up there with us right now, and I'd love if you could address them right now specifically. We're talking about some fairly big ideas, which a lot of us have a sense of, but does this have to be, for people that want to think more seriously about these issues and are maybe interested in questions of contemplation, where do you begin this on a day-to-day level, on a practical level, somebody that's coming of age? Do you have to meditate? Do you have to study Buddhism? Where does this action begin?
Really it just starts with the wanting to be happy, I feel. Because when we want that kind of happiness, we want that enjoyment, that chill life, we can look for where we can find it. We look for it in music or television or just sports. It's something that we feel motivates us, makes us feel alive. So we're constantly looking for it. So we don't need to meditate in order to find that. It's always there. We're always looking for it. We just have to be open to what it might be. We just have to keep looking, keep asking questions, not close down to anything. You must have heard of Gandhi's famous saying, "Be the change you want to see in the world." At my high school graduation, the teacher said that, and he gave this whole talk about how we, as young people, were going to be the change that we wanted to see in the world, and the class is kind of putting it all on us. Great, that's perfect. We got to save the world, but looking at it in a different perspective, that's exactly what I want. I want to be the change that I see in the world, because I realize that I am constantly affecting the world. It's not just for my generation, it's for every generation. Everyone is constantly affecting the world. And it's really just to be open and see how that is, no matter what age we are, because we have that responsibility just to ourselves to live a happy life. It's what we always want, and it's what we're always going to strive for in many various ways. So we'll never give up doing that, even if we think we're giving up. We will never truly give up looking for happiness, so why not? If we see that we are the change, if we see from our own experience we are the change we want to be in the world, let's do it.
You said earlier, and I like this, that along the same lines, that we create our own world. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times I feel that the world is really actually beyond my control very completely. And oftentimes we're put in situations in our life that can feel overwhelming, that can be maybe dangerous, that can be difficult for everybody. How do we begin to apply what you're talking about to situations that feel that way?
Being overwhelmed maybe sometimes by the world, or feeling like things are so beyond our control. At first, we have to really realize that, are we actually trying to control the world? Because it's just one very small person. And the attachment to that small identity is what causes us so much pain and suffering. So thinking that this one little person can control the world is not quite right. I mean, you can go for it if you feel like it, but I've tried to control the world, it doesn't work. The world doesn't listen so well. So being more open to the world, accepting the world, is really the first step. And I'm not saying be passive. I'm not saying just fall down on our knees in front of whatever life throws at us. But we have to accept it, just that it's there. It is the effect of a cause. It's not necessarily good or bad in itself, but it does promote or discourage the pursuit of happiness. It's how we choose to engage with the world as a part of the world that really creates the world around us. Not that we control it, but that we are a part of making it from our own perspective and how we affect others. It's not always that it goes the way we want, because, let's face it, there's a lot of backed up cause and effect. We're all here together. We're all having an effect on this situation right now. So I can't make this moment go just the way I want because we're all affecting it. But I'm still a part of it. We're all a part of it. And in that sense, if I can maintain a more positive outlook, I can engage things positively, and at least I will be happier as a person, even if I can't change all of you, even if I can't make the thunder go. Nope. But still, much happier as being myself, and well, perhaps if the conditions are right, I can affect the physical environment around me in a positive way.
I know when I was younger, I would see often these paintings and these things that looked really quite foreign, because you practice a certain Tibetan Buddhist lineage, and they didn't mean a lot to me at a time. It sounds like what we're talking about here is something that, well, it's rooted in Tibetan Buddhism, but it's probably rooted in a lot of other things as well. Mm-hmm. Can you just talk about ways that we don't have to know this iconography, we don't have to know what these bells are, but you're talking about something beyond just this tradition of yours.
Well, this painting is of the Buddha, and before the Buddha, that did not exist. You never saw pictures like that before the Buddha. So how does the Buddha attain enlightenment? How does the Buddha find ultimate happiness? Because it's already there. That is just a representation of what he found. That's just a clue, saying that it's out there. And it's easily accessible to everyone. Because the Buddha wasn't Buddhist. He wasn't himselfist. Yeah. So he was just examining life. Maybe they didn't even call it karma at the time. It was just cause and effect, or it's just the way things were. And he examined that. He didn't have too many bias. And he maybe had bad habits, which he had to change. He had to come outside of himself a bit more, his own personal situation, think of others. And as he did, he was able to observe the world more with an open mind and curiosity, and seeing that compassionate activity, compassionate attitude is what brings happiness to himself and to others. He pursued that, and he was able to attain enlightenment. So this painting, this horn, I mean, a lot of it is cultural influence, and these are from Tibet, so it's kind of like the Tibetan style. But at the heart of it, it's just a reminder of how things are, and that he saw that. And we don't prostrate, we don't bow to the Buddha because he is the Buddha, but because, I mean, not that he's the Buddha just in himself, but because he found that way and he was generous enough to go out of his way to show everyone else. And that gratitude is why we bow to the Buddha. That is why we hold him in such high esteem. Because, from my own perspective, without the teachings that he gave, I would be a total mess. I'm quite sure of it. I would be playing Pokemon all day long.
Well, I'll ask one more question and I want to open it up, but speaking of Pokemon, or this device you have in front of you, or many of the devices we carry in our pockets, there's no way to avoid the influence of a lot of technology now in our lives, especially with a lot of us that are growing up now with the internet 24/7, with phones. How does this factor into a life of contemplation, a life of thinking of these issues? Is it harder now than it was before? Do we have to get rid of all these gadgets to try and practice some kind of a spiritual life?
It would help. But I don't think it's totally necessary.
Because you seem very connected in with everything, and with something I respect about you is somebody who understands both, or at least recognizes them.
Maybe in where I live in Crestone, it's a very small town, not a whole lot going on. And aside from becoming insanely bored, you could say that, no, it's a really easy life in that small town. I mean, not a great deal of problems, but life is not just easy. Life is not just in a small town. Life is the world, it is the universe. This helps me see that there is so much more than just myself. I'm able to at least see that there are people out there who can inspire compassion within me. Like, I was in Crestone recently, very small town, don't really hear that much without the internet, and I heard about the attacks in Boston. I heard about it over the internet, and although I can't really do anything from where I am, I can at least generate some compassion. As my mother Elizabeth said a few days ago, I can at least bear witness, acknowledge those people, acknowledge their courage and their bravery. And those feelings and how I share those with my friends, in some way that may make it back to Boston. That may be of some help to those people who are there. Even though I'm not physically there, I can't really do anything where I am, I can at least generate the positive attitude. And because one of my friends is from Boston, and she's going back there soon, I think that it will, in some small way, have an effect. So there's a lot of opportunity with these devices. A lot of distraction, but a lot of opportunity. So it's a mixed bag. Like everything else, not really good or bad. It's just our attitude about it.
Well, let me open it up to the audience here. I know we could continue talking for hours.
Probably will.
Why don't we can start right here in the front?
Thank you so much. Actually, my question's a perfect, or my comment, it's a perfect segue because I actually am delighted to get to see Jampal talk in person because my first connection with him and Elizabeth was actually through their podcast. And I was listening to the podcast on the way home and the way here this morning, and I was listening to you talk about running away from bees and cause and effect and how we think about things, and now he's going, oh my God, she's gonna go through all these podcasts I've done. But that's not true. So I just wanna say thank you so much for being here and for giving a really fabulous, concise, specific, logical talk about this huge issue. And you've done a fabulous job, and I wanted to just know if you could please maybe just reiterate the issue of the difference between karma and fate. Because in Kentucky, which is where we are now, there is a great sense of fatalism. I'm here, I can't change, there's nothing I can do about it, it's my fate to have to deal with this. And that's a huge issue in terms of how we relate. And the difference between the cause and the conditions that bring us to this point and our fate for being here versus our fate for how we step forward.
Well, that's a good question. I realize I did not mention that. Fate, as I understand it, in the most common sense of the word, is predetermined. You cannot change it. Where you are, that's where you will be. With karma, it's more like where you are is because of such and such and such in the past. But you can still go anywhere. As long as you have choice, as long as you have the freedom to choose how you act, anything is possible. The causes and conditions have to be there, but you can create those causes and conditions, typically. Not always. It's not always exactly how you think it should be or how you think it will be, but you do have the opportunity to change any situation for the better. Fate is, if it's bad, case closed. Karma, it's neither good, it's neither bad, it's just how we act that affects our environment and our own mind. I am positive, I develop the habit of being more positive than I am negative. Therefore, I live a happier life, even though my physical surroundings may not change. With fate, nah, you're stuck like that. Oh,
Yeah, up top.
Hi, I'm Blake Dawson from James Garrett Brown School, and I first want to start off by saying thank you on behalf of myself and my freshman class here from Brown. And I want to ask you how you think that the Western world's influence of popular culture has affected people's view on karma, like yourself or anybody else around the world, how you think that's impacted people's view on karma.
Probably people just are more fatalistic, thinking that it is fate. You know, even in India sometimes, there are people that say, that's your karma. This is how it is. You can't do anything about it. Wait a minute, that's not karma. Why do you think that is karma? Oh, I saw it on a TV show called My Name is Earl. So it causes us to be more fatalistic in that way. I can't do anything about it. Just giving up. But that's not the case. And what we can do is just spread the word. It's just cause and effect. It's not anything arching over us that says, you are stuck there for all eternity. That's not how it is. But don't take my word for it. Examine it like a goldsmith examines gold. Maybe your experience of karma will be different. I'm pretty sure it won't, but that's just my opinion. So examine. Is karma inevitable in that way? Is it just totally fate? You might find something I haven't. Because I've only been looking into karma for 5 years, 10 years. Either way, you will probably find something much more personal and exciting. So I hope that addresses your question.
I think we have one right there.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for being here. I am a former nurse now studying and teaching humanities, specifically medical humanities. And there's a phenomenon in the medical community that I suspect is probably more universal than that, called compassion fatigue, that actually seems to strike the most open-hearted, the most selfless people who find it sometimes just overwhelming. And I know that developing a contemplative practice is probably incredibly helpful in combating that, but could you maybe suggest other attitudes or tools we might have in our toolbox for people who experience that?
I can't say I know much about that condition. I do know people, though, who are very compassionate, very outgoing. Actually, all of them are students right now, and they're in college and high school, and they're going out into the world, and they're really trying their best to be as compassionate as possible, to solve the issues of the world. But sometimes things just can't really be solved. Again, we have to just bear witness and do what we can, because those are the conditions of that moment. We can't always change the causes and conditions immediately. Maybe we can't within 100 years, because the causes from the past are so deeply ingrained. I mean, they have such a strong effect on where we are now. We do have to let go of maybe the tightness that we have to always accomplish something. There's an interesting bumper sticker I saw on Facebook. Funny that you see bumper stickers on Facebook. It should be on a bumper. It said, "Let us stop the glorification of being busy." There's a strong mentality, particularly in the West and in the East these days, of always needing to get something done, always doing something, always accomplishing. But we can't always accomplish. So sometimes we just have to relax around that. And the fatigue is really, in my experience, of trying to always accomplish. I mean, being compassionate, one thing, but then trying to accomplish everything, it's exhausting. But I don't think just being compassionate in itself is what brings that exhaustion on. It's the feeling of needing to do everything, have to solve everything, be everything. And we have to accept our own causes and conditions where we are right now, but at least generate the attitude. Compassionate attitude. If we can't act because the conditions aren't right, we can still generate the attitude. Hope that addresses that question. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, up top.
You said that some of our feelings are just a state of mind, right?
Right.
Right. So this world is at war, whether it's mentally or physically, and some human beings just don't let stuff go. How do you think that our future would look if everything's just a state of mind?
I think the future, depending on how we approach it, could look a lot better. Not that we're in a terrible place right now as a civilization, but if we all really adopt a positive state of mind, I think we could eliminate a great deal of suffering in the world. I think it's a quote by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Again, found out on Facebook, credibility is sketchy. That if every child in the world started meditating, we would eradicate all war and poverty within 100 years. I'm paraphrasing there, but when these conditions come up, we have to counter them with positive habits. We might lean more towards being negative. We might lean towards being jealous or angry. And that habit can be really strong. Sometimes we can justify it with, well, they hurt me. I can't just let that stand. I can't, they'll do it again if I don't do something. So we can justify our feelings like that, and maybe something does need to be done. But just with our own personal examination, if we look ourselves, no one influencing us, if we look at cause and effect, does anger, our own anger, really bring about the happiness that we want in general? If no, then we have to figure out how to deal with it. If we have the bad habit, bad meaning it doesn't help our happiness. If we have the habit of being angry, we have to counter that with another habit, compassion. When it comes up, just don't act, I'm angry, don't do anything, I won't do anything. Just gonna sit here, let it slowly dissolve. Okay, feeling a little bit better, compassion. And over time, we develop that habit. Habit becomes stronger. If we all do that every day with all the small, angry, upset, frustrated, painful emotions, if we do that every day, all of us, I'm sure we could have a huge effect on Louisville, Kentucky, and the world, really. But again, this is all for us to see ourselves. Right? It's for you to really find out. I'm just saying this.
And to jump in here quickly, a lot of the teachers I know this week are going to talk about to create these states of mind takes quite a bit of work. And I think that's something important to recognize, and I'd love for you to talk about it a little bit, which is that we can try and create, momentarily that state of mind for compassion, but just address the difficulty of doing that.
It's not easy. It's not easy, and it's because it's a really ingrained habit. You gotta take baby steps, I suppose. It's building those small habits, it's like quitting cigarettes, I guess, or for me, it's no more junk food. So craving comes up, sometimes you break, you eat a bag of Doritos. That's junk food, right? I'm kidding. You eat a bag of Doritos, but then next time you realize, okay, I had that previous bag of Doritos, I've got to stop. It's more serious now. I'm going in a bad direction with Doritos. I have to eat some celery. Counter with various habits. And there's so many ways. That's one of the great things about the logic within Tibetan Buddhism, is there are so many ways, various ways of dealing with those negative emotions as they come up. You don't ever try and push them away. Pushing stuff away, denying it, it's just going to come back later. You're not actually solving the problem, you're just ignoring it for a while. And it will come around. So we have to address it, and there are many ways of addressing it. We counter aggression with patience. We counter jealousy with wishing or rejoicing for other people. Like when they have something good, we try and feel happy for them. There are so many antidotes to these negative emotions, and I can't list them all. I can't even remember them all. There's so many. But they start with these baby steps.
Why don't we take one right here, right in front?
So I understand the concept of choosing someone else's happiness over your own as a way to build happiness for both of yourselves. how do you deal with the mutual exclusivity of the happiness of others, choosing one party over another, doing what's right for A may not be right for B? How do you choose that?
I guess that would be up to you in many ways. I generally look first for what benefits the greater good. If it's always one or the other, I look for a third option. If there are no conditions for a third option, where it has to be one gains, the other loses, I generally don't do anything. I just generate compassion. If I have to choose a side and hurt someone else, then I'm not the person to get involved. I'm not the person who can make a positive difference. So I'm not going to take it on myself to achieve anything. I'm not going to be the one to succeed where everyone else fails. I'm just going to let it be. If it's a condition, if it's a situation where I have to choose one or the other, and I'm going to cause someone pain, but it'll be good for them in the long run, making a tough decision for them, or they're having a hard time and got to help them out, even though it's painful at the time, then I try and look for the greater good, what will benefit in the long run. But a lot of conditions out there, there's no one set formula. So we have to just engage some basic intelligence, our natural intelligence. Examine the situation, just act how you feel you should act, but maintain a compassionate attitude. The attitude makes all the difference with how we act. Same action, different attitude, it can make a big difference. And we can see that from our experience.
What if there's no action, though? What if you just cultivate that mind, but there's no action? For example, you talked about Boston and cultivating prayers for those. Are these the same things? Do they need to be put into action?
In some ways, but not acting is really acting. Because even if I don't do anything, the situation will still move somewhere. If the situation will still continue on regardless of which party I get involved in. If I just generate compassion and don't act, it still affects me here. I'm building the habit. I'm always trying to build habits. I'm always breaking habits, building habits. So I'm always going to try and build that beneficial habit. And if I don't act, then maybe there wasn't room for me to be there. But I'm still doing my best. Even acting or not acting both have an effect. I suppose.
Should we go up top?
The question I had was, for like compassion and like the topic on that, what it seems like is a lot of the time people care for people who are in like bad states of their life, if it's addiction or something like that, and you're talking about happiness for caring for people, but what it seems like happens is codependency, and the almost opposite happens as you feel codependent towards someone, and then you start to feel bad if they feel bad. And I was wondering what you should like do about that situation.
That can be tricky. That can be really tricky. And honestly, I personally try to avoid that kind of codependency with anyone, but it does come up. And we have to think of a greater benefit. I mean, I said the whole, sometimes we have to act in a way that hurts someone in the short term, but it will help them in the long term. And I have that kind of addictive situation in mind where a friend is suffering over substance abuse or something like that, and you gotta call a helpline, and they really don't want to go, but you gotta make them go, and they feel better in the end. And I've had some tough choices like that, where I've had to watch my friends be in a lot of pain, but then they felt much better after the fact. And then sometimes, no, it didn't really help, but I had to try to do something at the time because I thought that it would help or there was no other way. I came from a compassionate place, and I just have to feel good about that, at least. Even if I wasn't able to help the situation, I'm only one small person with a tremendous impact on the world. A very subtle, tremendous impact on the world, like we all are. We can't think that we're going to accomplish everything, that we're going to do everything, even though everything we do has an effect on the world. We can't say that we will control it just with who we are. But we can engage with the world. And codependency is a tricky business because we have our own feelings about the person. We have what we think is the right thing, what we feel is another thing, vice versa. Yeah, it's not easy, but we acknowledge those challenges and we know that we're coming from a good place. And the more we learn, the more we're able to make a better choice in that way. Yeah.
Let's go down here.
Hello, thank you for a lovely speech and for such a lovely, calm composure. I think that's really nice in this busy world. I have a question. We were talking about compassion fatigue, I thought it was, when you send out compassion to others. But when we turn it to the self, could you try to define or explain the difference between self-care and being selfish? Because I think that's something that many battles with.
It is a good question. Well, what do you think the difference is first?
But I was asking you.
Ooh, she's good. She's good. You've just encountered the nightmare of a moderator.
Well, from maybe your own experience, you may have a different idea. Personally, I find that any sort of self-emphasis, whether positive or negative, will not be beneficial in the long run. Self-care is important. We have to take care of ourselves, and we find that taking care of ourselves, I mean, aside from just taking care of our general conditions, I have to drink, I have to eat to stay healthy, not emphasizing ourselves so much is also self-care. It relieves stress, stress being one of the major causes of disease and suffering, particularly in this country. Being hard on ourselves is another form of self-indulgence because we're focusing on ourselves, even in a negative way, like bad me, it's still about me. Good me, it's all about me. The self-emphasis is what brings most of the pain. The attachment to self. I can't say that, I'm not here. You're all staring at an empty space. I'm here, I function. So I can't deny that. At the same time, it's not all about me. Even if I function, I'm not the important thing here. So that versus indulging in myself, I'd say that's probably the biggest difference between self-care and self-indulgence. But what do you think?
Well, I actually, I'm a mother, so I've been spending a lot of my adult life taking care of my children, taking care of my community, being very active. But I encountered about 1.5 years ago what I would describe as a density arising in myself. And it was very difficult for me at that point to reach out to others. So I actually had to just close the shutters and find out what that density was about. And it was very difficult for me to explain to the world around me whether that was selfish or self-care. So hence my question.
So what do you think?
Well, I think it was self-care because I'm sitting here today.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Two questions up there?
Is there one up? Let's go up top.
Oh, here we go. I have a question. I'm sorry. Somebody else speaking? Okay, I'm over here on this side.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
Then we'll get to the one up top.
Okay, sorry. I have a question. Could you speak to us about the following? I suppose that criminals and drug dealers are also searching after a certain kind of happiness. Could you speak to us about the karma of these people?
That particularly is, I suppose with different conditions, I could also have been a drug dealer or a murderer if the conditions were conducive to that, if there was some cause for that in my past. And it would all be motivated out of the natural desire to attain happiness, but absolutely no idea of how to attain that. As I said, we can look for things in the outer world. We can, ravage through any number of stimulus or just taking everything that we see in hopes that it will fulfill something within ourselves and still find absolutely nothing inherent within those objects that brings us happiness. We can do all manner of things, we can take all manner of things and still not find that, and it's really that confusion that leads us into suffering, it leads us into terrible choices. And there are causes and conditions that lead to that, but those are neither good nor bad, it's just whether they are conducive or inconducive to happiness, and our choices along the way really determine where we go. These people probably had no notion of happiness comes from within, trying to find things externally, looking for money, looking for, being subject to one's own negative emotions and not having that kind of discipline and control. We can label these people as one way, but they are human beings, they are living beings. I'm not defending anyone, I'm not denying anyone, I'm just saying that this is how I see everyone is. We're all looking for that in various ways. And that desire to find happiness mixed with confusion can lead us to some pretty dark places. So we have to search out in a more positive attitude what will really bring that happiness around. And if it weren't for my connection, the connection I already have, I may have gone in that direction too.
This is where karma, though, can be a tricky issue because in a lot of traditions, the Hindu tradition, simply that we're born into the world with a certain karma as well. And therefore, it doesn't matter what conditions are around us, but we are already shaped. What does your tradition and your schooling teach you about that? Do we come into the world already with conditions? Are we good or bad coming into the world?
Again, no good or bad. It's just whether it's conducive or inconducive to happiness. In my tradition, we are born to the world already with conditions. But those conditions are influenced by our previous life. And one of the reasons we can inference that there is a previous life because we are born into the world with such conditions. Because there is no case in cause and effect where an effect arises without a cause. When you trace back cause and effect, where does it end? Where does it begin? We never see an ending or a beginning. Thus, we are born into the world with no backstory, and yet we have this very specific set of conditions in our lives. That doesn't make much sense to me. So I feel more confident in the traditional approach that we are born influenced by our previous lives. And that's where our karma has brought us to in this life, and then it'll continue into the next life based on the actions we perform now.
A whole bigger topic.
Bigger, much bigger.
Let's go up top.
Okay, so I want to ask, if I obtain the compassionate mindset, how can I remain disciplined when surrounded in an environment of such negativity and anger? Like, if I want to change the better for me to find happiness, how is it that I can be not affected by someone's actions if I'm somewhat reliant on their actions to be happy with myself? Like,
One of two ways. You have to either be really, really strong in your generating compassion, or you have to physically remove yourself from that negative situation so that you can continue to generate compassion without being influenced in such a way. Because we are influenced by our surroundings, and trying to generate compassion in a very angry environment is difficult. So you either need that strength, you really need to generate compassion with all your might, or you need to remove yourself from the situation so that you can generate compassion. If you really want to generate that compassion, if you really see the benefit of that. It's the only two ways I know of.
Let's take one more question. Sure. Let's wait for the microphone. There's one. It's on its way. Okay. We'll take a few more.
I have a question, but I also wanted to interject, if I may, about the compassion fatigue, because I'm a physician, and there's actually a great book called Medicine and Compassion, and it was written by Choki Nyima Rinpoche, and it's a book that addresses that entire topic. And it was my first introduction to Tibetan Buddhism, and actually a real life changer for me, and I strongly recommend it for any type of medical professional. But my question has to do with actually the karma and, this thought of it being punishment. And for instance, say you have a child and they die of cancer at a very young age. In dealing with that, is that a punishment? Is that something from your past life? How do you deal with those type of issues, with that type of negativity?
There is this idea sometimes that karma has a consciousness of its own. that karma is out to get us. But it's just cause and effect. So there really is no punishment. It is unfortunate with these causes and conditions that lead to these situations, but it is just the cause and effect of our actions in this life or in previous lives that cause these situations to come about. As painful as it is, it's not really a punishment. And it's kind of hard to accept in some ways because it's easier to point the finger at something else. But it's really nothing to point a finger at when you examine it closely, other than our own actions or just cause and effect, the situation as it has manifested. That those specific conditions came about in the first place. It's all part of that big web of action and reaction and reaction and reaction, which led to that precise moment, which led to action and reaction and reaction and reaction. So, no, I can't say that there is any punishment within there. Although we can only really address those situations with compassion and positive intention for the future as well. That things, again, don't end. I don't think they end there. And so there can be ground for a better situation in the future for everyone.
We'll do one more. We only have a few minutes left. It's up to you. We'll go right in front here.
Sorry. Thank you. So one way that you've outlined very well to deal with effects of causes is in real time. And my question is about the accumulation of effects over time, the procession of karma. And one way to conceive of that outside of a reincarnation model is through, how states of being that begin to solidify inside of us begin to alter the body, change the genes, and that is transmitted to, future generations. And so that can persist. And then so someone is born in conditions conducive to certain habit, energy, and so on. So my question is, we can deal with, of course, what comes up in the present moment, and that being critical. But do you have a method in your tradition to deal with the accumulated stuff proactively before it comes up in the present moment so it doesn't sort of bite you? To kind of open the closet, look under the rug, and start to clean house. And so that's kind of the daunting thing about karma for some people, is this inherited mass, whether we think it comes from past lives or through ancestral lines or whatever.
The only method that I know of is to continue studying karma. Because looking under the rug, you can say look under the rug, but where is the rug? Where is that place where I can see my past actions, where I can conceive what they will be in the future or how they will affect the world and come around back to me? Without a very clear understanding of cause and effect, without really deep contemplation on cause and effect, I am too stuck in what is obvious. I can only see the gross stuff. I can't see all the subtleties. When we understand karma to a phenomenal degree, I think it is possible to see what will come and how we can address that beneficially. But personally, I can only continue contemplating karma until I reach that stage.
Well, Jampal, thank you so much for today and for your speech. Thank you. Next. Science. Oh, I should say there's also a really fascinating topic on this that we're going to be talking about, which is a connection between meditation and neuroscience throughout the week. That's tomorrow morning.
Well, yes, there's a lot on that, but also that we would end with our 3 minutes.
And we're also going to end with 3 minutes of silence.
I don't know if I can hold on for 3 more minutes. It might be a shorter 3 minutes since, you know. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the schools of Louisville.